what empowered King Crimson to be able to destroy me was their lie about my could have saved John Lennon, that stuff. That's what gave Ringo Starkey his power to work with Greg Carl and Will Zell on Mount Desert Island and rub everybody's faces in the fact that they were in on the AIDS attack. But very few of my friends, acquaintances, people who know me, counselors, or newcomers to the situation buy and lease the idea that I was somehow to blame for the murder of John Lennon. So that's the storyline that was implanted on the neuroplasm, clamped on it, swedged on it. But most of the people who have contributed to the scary and sad situation, the ringleader of whom was from Youngstown, Ohio, buy it. I mean, she acid dropped little barbs like you got enough clues, but very few people. It's the way that the Heinz Foundation confiscate everything through the police society. But, the doctrinal refrain could have saved John Lennon. But the truth is it's not really something that people buy. So there's another explanation. And that seems to be very simply peer betrayal. But to make a case about peer betrayal, you have to divest of having anyone who wants to hear what you have to say. So that's why you'll notice that there's that very few people take trouble to watch my videos. A lot of people wanted to compare themselves favorably to me, so they knocked me down by making me deaf, then making a laughing stock out of me because I was brain damaged from the torture that they subjected me to. The Jews were very happy. Jimmy Curry, humiliating happy. They all wanted to take turns humiliating Jimmy Curry. It made them feel better than somebody. So, but when you talk about peer betrayal in this kind of situation, it was organized crime. It was foundational. It was the billionaire class confiscating freedom of speech by intoning narratives. They didn't teach me sign language. They wouldn't let anybody teach me sign language. The girl who taught me sign language was punished. So obviously there was a Veterans Administration and union organization who were in watch and in place. And they had the Bar Association. Edgar Snyder was a big one. Ralph Taff was another. The Kirshners. The institutional establishment and the Jewish establishment in Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh all made sure that they were part of this VA union lobby that would not remedy how they terrorized me. So what is at the root of this sickening peer betrayal? It's really very sickening. Let's disregard the idea that sex was involved. For example, Andrea, who was an agent of the Neva Pornographic, was just, they had no business making it look like she had an IUD before she met me. She was older than me. They had no business in any way making it look like I had anything to do. I tried to help her. One of my mother's colleagues was the woman who adopted her. So, I mean, CMU and Peter Gabriel had no business. Seattle had no business whatsoever making it out that the girls were sleeping around more than the men in Pittsburgh in those days. So, I mean, let's get rid of that one. Even though he plays to the crowd a lot. I mean, if you go before the Franklin Graham Foundation, there's always a girl who stood up, said, then I took my coat off, then I took my shirt off, then I took my bra off. And then I realized I was there, I was naked before Jesus. And they go, yay! There's always that kind of seedy undercurrent to seedy stories. Ringo Starr makes millions of bucks off this kind of stuff. It's demeaning, it's not gentlemanly, and it doesn't mind their own business, and it's abusive of the people who they victimize. But they get their rocks off doing it, so it's a constant theme when it comes to people who are in the prison of having to pretend that they're free speech. The newspaper business, the magazine business, the hustlers. They get hold of a sex story. Bronstein says, hey, Jimmy Craig got laid by Andrea. Okay, so they put it on the front page. And nobody cares, but they buy the paper anyway because it says something. It says fact. So we can do away with that one too. That's nonsense. The root of the peer betrayal is that in order to understand what was coming down the highway through the editorials, when you lay out the spreadsheets and look at the arrangements in Pitt News and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, particularly the way they have suppressed and disappeared my divestment article as though it wasn't persuasive, as though it wasn't relevant, as though it didn't have high impact, as though it never even existed. The way these things were all arranged, and Clint Eastwood showing his hand and Peter Gabriel showing the hands. The big card game that came down, slap, on the editorial boards, a place where I was, being worked over to get lunch money, working double time. They were using me. In order to see what was coming down the highway in that miasma, that arrangement, that seismographic graphing system, that zone, the Android zone, you had to establish a sort of class factor. Class not in terms of rich and poor, but in terms of the Tubes boy crazy, girl crazy class. Zappa's Jimmy told Bobby, Bobby told Jimmy, the Tubes World Tour stuff. Where are you on the grand parade to the extermination program of the AIDS attack, right? And if you broke the law, the peer betrayal comes in and says if you smoked reefer, then you are of the class that deserves to die. And this is Seattle's matrix. This is UW Dialectical's matrix. This is the German Green Party's matrix. And so they come and they say, don't you want to smoke some pot? Don't you want to smoke some pot? I didn't want to smoke some pot, but I wanted to be friendly and it didn't bother me that much. So I did smoke a little pot. And then I was in the class who was on the extermination program. Single file to the contamination room. So recognizing that, I put myself out in harm's way. They said I put a sign on my backside that said, please kick me. And so I was on the run from my own shadow. Rather than, and they all said, Howard DeBurgio was like, no, you were running from your own shadow. Why would you play into a situation like that? And I said, to follow the leader, to identify who was playing this 10th victim program of executing me. And it turned up. Greg Carl's papers turned up. The persona is subjected to successive degradations of the X motive. And the peer betrayal came like a huge bad knife. Ah! And they go around, they say, well, he was manifestly betrayed. Everybody knows that Jimmy was betrayed by the people closest to him because of Rosa, who represented Rosa Clemente, and Putin, and Peter Gabriel, and Yoko Ono. She came in and got him to fall in love with her so that she could detonate the human bomb in the implant from Nosferatu. So we know that Jimmy Carrey was betrayed. Everybody knows that. So then they say, wouldn't he want revenge? Wouldn't he want revenge? And so they start making things up. I drove recklessly at Kelly's school. I was going to, one guy named Tony, a black man who worked at Pizza, Tony, who would probably represent that Tony from Post, he said, oh, Queer Bro's going to start attacking people with a battle axe. He's going to start. And they spread these stories and shamelessly spread these stories. Amanda Harcourt, Yoko Ono, Peter Gabriel, Robert Fripp, Oliver Stone was a royal criminal when it came to spreading lies and tormenting me. He said, do you have a neuroplasm that's tormenting you and causing you terrible suffering? If the answer is yes, then therefore you are dangerous, is their reasoning. Cyril Weck's evaluation of the situation. And Michelle Obama and Barack Obama were so over-invested in this catastrophe, this personal catastrophe, this abuse of a person. They were so over-invested in it that they made Seattle Mental Health organize to stab a girl because they had to get me to say, I will shake my fist at you. They had to, because they had nothing. They had no threats. They had no, I mean, they had raped people and they had murdered people. So they rip and murdered the school. And finally, I lost my temper. I went home in my pajamas and said, I will mess you up if you do that anymore. They said, ha ha! You should have seen the glee in the black woman's face who came to my house and kicked the door down. Yee, we got you! You threatened us! Yay! That's how it operates.